The church bells were still echoing in my head when I walked into the quiet house. The funeral was over, but my heart was heavy, my black dress still clinging to the scent of candles and rain. My husband Henry was gone. Just 3 days earlier, he had been full of life, joking about fixing the fence, telling me not to burn the soup. And then, in one sharp moment, his heart gave out, and the house fell silent forever. I thought grief would give me space, time to breathe, time to cry. But grief had no time here. As soon as I opened the door, I saw my brother Martin sitting at the dining table, his suit too sharp, his shoes too polished for someone who should have been mourning. A man I hadn't seen in months was now in my house, drinking from Henry's favorite glass of whiskey. "Clara," he said softly, standing up as though he had been waiting for me. "I'm so sorry about Henry. Really, I am." His eyes didn't look sorry. His hands were already on a brown leather folder, the kind lawyers carry. Beside him sat Mr. Callahan, our family lawyer, his face pale and uncomfortable. He avoided my eyes, flipping through the papers as if forced into this meeting. Martin gestured toward the chair at the head of the table. "Sit. We need to discuss the land, Clara. You can't handle it alone. It's too much for you now. The tenants, the taxes, the boundaries, all of it. Henry left you with a burden, and I, your brother, am here to help." His words sounded sweet, but each one had poison under it. My grief was raw, but even in that moment, I could see through the kindness. Martin wasn't here to help. He was here to take. Callahan cleared his throat. "Clara, your brother has prepared some transfer documents. Just standard things, to ensure the estate doesn't fall apart during this difficult time." His voice wavered, almost apologetic. I looked at the folder. The land Henry and I had built our life on. The fields we harvested together, the small farmhouse we restored brick by brick, was folded into neat white pages with spaces for my signature. Martin slid the folder closer. "You don't have to decide today," he said, pretending to be gentle. "But the sooner you sign, the sooner everything is secure. You can grieve in peace while I take care of the complicated matters. That's what family is for." My throat felt tight, but not from sadness anymore. From anger. Henry wasn't even in the ground a full week, and Martin was already circling like a vulture. I forced my lips into a thin smile. "I'll need a day." Martin leaned back, eyebrows raised, pretending to be patient. "Of course. A day. But don't delay too long. These matters move quickly, and the land must be protected before outsiders get involved." I nodded and excused myself, carrying nothing but silence up the staircase. Behind me, I heard his voice, low, confident, telling Callahan, "She'll sign." They always do when they're alone. Alone. That was the word he believed described me now. Alone, weak, vulnerable. But Martin was wrong. When the sun went down, I changed into a plain coat and walked quietly into town. My steps carried me to Callahan's office, the same man who had been sitting in my dining room earlier, looking ashamed. He opened the door, surprised to see me. "Clara," he whispered, "I didn't want to come today, but your brother insisted. He pressured me for weeks, saying it was the only way to keep the estate from outsiders. I didn't know what else to do." I looked at him steadily. "You knew Henry, Mr. Callahan. Did you think Henry wouldn't plan for this?" He hesitated. "What do you mean?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded envelope. The paper was worn from my hands, but the seal was unbroken. Henry updated his will last month. He signed it, notarized it, and left it with me. He left everything to me, directly and clearly. My brother has no claim. And tomorrow I will show him. Callahan exhaled, relief flashing across his face. "Then we must be careful. If Martin is willing to press you this soon, he won't stop easily. We can use his greed against him. Let him set the trap, and you can walk in with the truth." I nodded. My grief had not lessened, but inside me, a new fire lit. Martin thought I was broken, too tired to resist. But Henry had trusted me with his last word, and I would not betray that trust. "Tomorrow," I said quietly, "he will learn the meaning of family." I left the office, clutching Henry's will close to my chest. The night air was cold, but for the first time since the funeral, I felt something more than sadness. I felt ready. And so the game began. The morning after that long night, I woke up to the sound of silence in the house. Henry's side of the bed was empty, and it felt like a hollow ache. For a few moments I just sat there, staring at the ceiling, letting the weight of grief press against me. But then I reminded myself, Henry had trusted me to be strong. He had left me his will not just to keep the land safe, but to keep his legacy alive. I could not crumble now. Downstairs, Martin's folder was still on the dining table. I opened it slowly, flipping through the papers. Every line was written to push me out, legal words that made me look like a caretaker, not an owner. My name was barely present, while Martin's name was everywhere. He had been planning this carefully, waiting for the moment Henry was gone. But Henry had been planning too. I placed Martin's folder aside and pulled out the envelope Henry had left me. The will was clear. I, Henry Whitmore, leave my entire estate, including all lands, property, and assets, to my wife, Clara Whitmore, without contest. His handwriting was steady, his signature strong. It was notarized, dated, and undeniable. I spent the morning in town with Mr. Callahan. He had agreed to help me, not by confronting Martin directly, but by letting Martin reveal his own greed. The law works best when people expose themselves, he said. Together, we made a quiet plan. Callahan drafted a short document for Martin, a sworn statement declaring that Clara Whitmore, widow of Henry, willingly transferred all rights to the estate and that no other valid will existed. It looked official, harmless, but it was a trap. If Martin signed it, he would be swearing falsely before legal witnesses. Let him come with his arrogance, Callahan told me, tapping the paper. And when he does, we'll have proof that he tried to defraud you. I asked for witnesses. 2 men from town, neutral and respected, agreed to sit in on the signing. They thought it was just paperwork, but in truth, their presence would give everything weight. If Martin signed, there would be no escape. That evening, I went to the bank and opened Henry's lockbox. Inside was not only the will, but also a letter addressed to me. I sat in the quiet corner of the bank and unfolded it with trembling hands. Clara, it read, if you are reading this, it means I'm no longer beside you. I know your brother. I know his hunger. I've seen it in his eyes whenever we talked about the land. You are stronger than you think. If anyone ever tries to take what we built, don't fight with anger. Fight with truth. Protect our home the way we built it, brick by brick, honest and firm. I pressed the letter against my heart. Tears came, but not of weakness, of strength. Henry had known this day might come, and he trusted me to face it. That night, I went home and wrote in my journal. Tomorrow, Martin will try to take my life away on paper. Tomorrow, he will sign his own downfall. When the morning came, Martin arrived early at Callahan's office, wearing the same smug suit, his hair combed too neatly. He brought his lawyer this time, but his eyes betrayed him. He thought the game was already won. I told you, he said as he walked past me, not even acknowledging my presence, she'll sign. She knows she can't handle it. He didn't know I was not here to sign. I was here to watch him hang himself with his own greed. Callahan welcomed him politely and placed the statement on the desk. This is just a standard confirmation, Mr. Hale. If you sign here, everything will proceed smoothly. Martin didn't even read it fully. He laughed, made a small joke about how complicated legal language always was, and picked up the pen. I waited in the other room, my hands clasped tightly together, listening to the faint scratching sound of the pen moving across paper. That was the sound of betrayal. That was also the sound of his trap closing. As the ink dried, I felt my heartbeat steady. The time for grief was ending. The time for truth was beginning. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and ink. Callahan's office always carried that weight of seriousness, but today it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I sat in the adjoining waiting room, hidden behind a half-closed door. My hands were tight together, fingers cold even though the morning sun was warm outside. Every sound came sharp, the shuffle of papers, the low murmur of voices, the faint clink of Martin's pen as he tapped it against the desk. Then, the sound I had been waiting for. The scratch of the pen as it touched paper. The drag of ink across a line. He wasn't hesitating. He wasn't questioning. He was signing his name with confidence, believing this moment gave him power. I closed my eyes for one heartbeat. It was almost too easy. Inside, Martin laughed. There. Done. That wasn't so hard. Now, Callahan, make sure all this is filed quickly. I don't want delays. The land needs a strong hand, and my sister will thank me later when she realizes how much responsibility I've lifted from her shoulders. My chest tightened with anger. He talked about me as if I were a helpless child, not the woman who had built a life with Henry, side by side, season after season. Callahan's voice was steady but strained. Yes, Mr. Hale. The statement is signed. The witnesses have observed. Everything is in order. Silence followed. A silence heavy enough that I knew this was my cue. I pushed open the door. The hinges creaked, and the sound sliced the air like a blade. Every head turned. The two witnesses straightened in their chairs. Callahan's face went pale, then brightened with quiet relief. And Martin froze, his confident smirk cracking in an instant. I stepped forward slowly, dressed in black, still marked by mourning but no longer broken. I carried the envelope in my hands, its weight stronger than any weapon. "Clara," Martin stammered, standing halfway. "What are you doing here? You weren't supposed to." "Supposed to what?" I cut him off, my voice calm but firm. "Supposed to disappear? To sit quietly while you stole the land Henry and I built." He blinked, his mouth opening but no words coming out. His lawyer shifted uneasily beside him. I walked to the table, placed the envelope down, and unfolded the will with slow precision. The witnesses leaned in. The black ink of Henry's handwriting seemed to glow in the morning light. "This," I said, tapping the paper, "is Henry's last will. Signed. Notarized. Dated 1 month before he died. Every acre, every brick, every asset left to me, his wife, Clara Whitmore. Not to you, Martin. Not to anyone else." The room was silent, except for the sound of my own heartbeat. I pulled another paper from my coat pocket, a small recorder. I pressed play. Martin's voice filled the room, clear and undeniable. "Stop pretending you have rights, Clara. The land belongs to me now. Just sign what I tell you, and don't make this harder than it needs to be." The witnesses stiffened. Callahan's eyebrows rose. Even Martin's lawyer looked down at the desk, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Martin's face turned red. You twisted that. You don't understand. I was only trying to." "To what?" I asked sharply. "To protect me? To save me? Or to erase me?" The witnesses glanced at each other, their expressions grim. The truth was laid bare before them. Callahan picked up the signed statement Martin had just completed. His voice carried weight as he read it aloud. "I, Martin Hale, hereby affirm that Clara Whitmore willingly transferred her rights and that no other valid will exists." He set the paper down with finality. "And yet, here sits Mrs. Whitmore, presenting the valid will of her late husband. Which means your statement, Mr. Hale, is false." And signed before witnesses. The silence broke with a soft gasp from one of the witnesses. Martin's hands shook. He tried to grab the folder, to hide the papers, but his lawyer stopped him, whispering urgently in his ear. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You thought I was weak, Martin. You thought grief made me blind. But Henry trusted me. And today, everyone in this room sees what you tried to do. Martin sat back heavily in his chair, his confidence gone. His eyes darted from face to face, searching for an ally, but found none. For the first time in my life, I saw my brother not as the man who once teased me as a child, or the man who stood beside me at our parents' grave, but as a stranger, cold, greedy, and small. And I knew, in that moment, nothing would ever be the same again. The office was silent after I spoke. Silent in a way that made the air feel heavy, as if the walls themselves were waiting for what would happen next. Martin sat stiff in his chair, his hands trembling near the papers he had just signed. His confident smile had completely vanished, replaced with the pale, nervous face of a man caught in his own trap. One of the witnesses finally broke the silence. "Mr. Hale, you signed that statement yourself. You swore your sister had agreed, and that no will existed. Yet the will is right here. I don't see how you can explain that." Martin's lips moved, but no sound came out. He looked at me, then at Callahan, then at the will lying on the table, as if it were some ghost haunting him. "This isn't fair," he finally whispered. "I was only trying to protect the family land. Clara doesn't know how to manage it. Henry trusted me more than." "Stop," I said, my voice calm but cutting. "If Henry trusted you, he would have left the land to you. He didn't. He left it to me. And you knew it. That's why you rushed here before the soil on his grave had even settled." The second witness shook his head slowly. "This isn't about protection. This is about greed." Martin slammed his hand on the table. "You don't know what it's like. I built nothing. I inherited nothing. Clara was always the favored one. Henry gave her everything, and I—" He stopped himself, realizing too late that his words were only confirming what everyone already knew. I stood straighter, holding Henry's will in my hand like a shield. "This was never about the land, Martin. This was about envy. You couldn't stand to see me have a life, a marriage, a home. You wanted to take what wasn't yours. And now you've signed proof of that." Callahan cleared his throat, his voice steady again. "Mrs. Whitmore has every right to take these papers to court. Fraudulent intent, signed before witnesses, is not something easily excused." Martin's face turned even paler. He looked at me then, really looked at me. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He realized I held not just Henry's will, but his future in my hands. "Clara," he said quickly, his voice shaking now, "please, don't ruin me. I made a mistake. I was desperate. You've always been stronger than me. I thought I could finally have something for myself. Please, don't take this to court. Don't let everyone know. I'll lose everything." I stared at him. For a moment, I saw the boy he once was, my older brother who had carried me on his shoulders as a child, who had shared bread with me when we were hungry. But then I remembered the man who had sat in my house the night of my husband's funeral, smiling as he tried to erase me from my own life. I took a deep breath. "You've already lost, Martin. Not because I ruined you, but because you chose greed over family. You could have stood beside me. Instead, you tried to steal from me." He lowered his eyes, shame flooding his face. Callahan looked at me carefully. "Mrs. Whitmore, what do you want to do?" The room waited. The witnesses leaned forward. Martin's lawyer sat frozen. Everyone was waiting for my decision. I placed Henry's will back into the envelope, folded the recorder, and looked directly at my brother. "I'm not going to court. Not today. Not because you deserve mercy, but because I don't want to live with revenge poisoning what Henry and I built. But you will write me an apology. You will sign a sworn promise never to contest this will, never to come near my land, and never to involve yourself in my affairs again. If you break it, I won't hesitate to take all of this evidence to the judge." Martin's mouth fell open. That's more kindness than you deserve," I cut in. "Take it." His lawyer nodded quickly, whispering something in his ear. Within minutes, Martin scrawled his shaky signature on the prepared agreement Callahan wrote. His hands trembled so badly that the ink blotched, but the promise was made. When it was done, he pushed the paper away, his head bowed. For the first time in his life, Martin had no words left. He stood slowly, his eyes red, and walked out of the office without another glance at me. The door closed, and the silence that followed was lighter than before. Callahan leaned back in his chair. "You handled this with strength, Clara. Many would have sought punishment. You chose dignity." I nodded, though my heart ached. Henry always said the land should carry peace, not bitterness. I won't let my brother's betrayal change that. In the weeks that followed, I stayed busy. I worked with the tenants, paid the taxes, and even donated a strip of the land to build a small community garden in my mother's name. I wanted people to see that I wasn't hoarding wealth, but honoring what Henry and I had built together. Martin never returned. In town, whispers followed him wherever he went. People knew enough of the truth, that he had tried to steal from his own sister. His reputation was gone, and so was the power he thought he held. And me? I stood taller. I was still grieving Henry, and I always would, but grief was no longer my weakness. It had become my strength. I had defended our life, our love, and our home. One evening, I sat by the window and read Henry's letter again. His words felt alive. "If anyone tests your strength, protect what we built." I smiled through tears. "I did, Henry," I whispered. "I did." And with that, I knew I had won, not through anger, not through revenge, but through truth.